In this video, we're going to take a look at how to build a lottery simulator. Now you can see that I have my graphical user interface, so let's go over some of the things you're going to need. The first thing you're going to need is a group box, and you can find that inside the toolbox, and you're going to double click on group box. You can leave the name, whatever is default, which is group box 1. Inside the group box, you're going to need to place 6 labels. Now, the first label that I have is called LBL num1. The second name is LBL num2. The third one is LBL num3. The fourth one is LBL num4. And the fifth one is LBL num5. Something else you're going to need is a label that that has a title, enter numbers here, so the user knows what to put inside the text box, and I called that LBL enter numbers. You're going to need a simple text box, a regular standard text box, and I called TXT user numbers. That is the name of that one. Right underneath that, you're going to need a rich text box, and I called this one TXT directions, and inside it simply states how to play the lotto. This is following the Florida lottery rules. Select 5 different numbers between 1 and 53, separated by a space. You can also select the quick pick button to have the computer generate 5 random numbers for you. Then we have 4 buttons that can also, all these can be found in the toolbox. We have the first one, which is BTN submit. This is so after the user enters his or her numbers, they can submit the numbers so they're locked in. We have quick pick, which is BTN quick pick is the name, and that's going to generate the 5 random numbers. We have play. This means that the computer is going to generate the 5 lottery numbers, and then it's going to compare it to the user and see if they match up. And of course, BTN exit, which is going to be our exit button, which exits the application. So I didn't tell you the name of the play button, but it is BTN play. So go ahead and pause here, put these objects on your user interface, and then we'll switch over to the code. Now that you have your graphical user interface set up, let's go ahead and let's start coding this out. The first thing we need to do is code that exit button. So we're going to do application.exit. Perfect. We're also going to need a couple global variables. Now remember, we said this video is about learning how to use an array list. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5 user numbers and we're going to store them not inside of an array, but an array list. So we're going to do dim user numbers as new array list, and just like that you have an array list set up ready to go. We're also going to need match, and that's going to be a boolean, and we're going to check to see if the 5 user numbers match the 5 numbers generated by the computer. Now the odds of that happening are very, very small, so I'll show you how to test for that, or the code for it, and how it works, but the chances of us actually getting winning numbers is very, very small. If you test yours and you get winning numbers, you may want to head out and play the lottery right away. Okay, so now that we have our global variables and our exit button, we can go ahead and start designing this. So what we're going to do is first, we're going to do submit numbers. We're going to go ahead and code out for that. User characters. And the reason we're going to need that is because we want to copy from the text box the string that's in the text box, put it inside this so we can do string manipulation. We're going to need the current characters. Now this is going to be a string. That's in case there's a 2-digit number, and the last one we need is current num. Once we have figured out if it is a 1 or 2-digit number, we're going to go ahead and convert that to an integer. So we're going to take it as a string, and then we're going to convert it to a number, because if you take a string and try to convert it to an integer by loading it into a variable, it's going to crash. But there is a convert to method that we are going to use. So the first thing we want to do is we want to load up the user character string, and we're going to take what was inside the user numbers text box. We're going to take the text and load it into user characters. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do string manipulation. We're going to use the mid function to move along the string, isolating those numbers. So we're going to do for I equals 1, 2, and that's going to be user characters dot length. Now, if you want to do the 6 lottery numbers, you can, because there would be 6 lotto numbers. Now, you'll need to add an extra label. We are doing fantasy 5 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do current chars. And this is to figure out if there's a 1 or 2 digit number. It's going to be mid. Now I'm using my mid string manipulation. I'm working with user characters. And then what I'm going to do is I want to start at character I, and I want to go the length of 1 character. So this means when I do this, it's going to start at the very first character. So say my first number is 1. It's going to isolate that and put it into character chars. Now you'll notice I have plus equals. What if the number is 12? Well, I want to put in the 1. Then when it isolates the next one, I want to put in the 2. And that's why current chars is a string and not a character, because a character can only hold 1 character. The next thing that we're going to need to do is we need to determine if they entered a letter. Now I'm going to use select case, and that's going to be current chars. And I need to know if they entered a letter. So maybe they entered capital A to capital Z. Maybe they entered lowercase a to lowercase z. If so, that is a letter that is not allowed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a message box that says letters are not allowed. And then what I'm going to do is I need to go ahead and I need to reset the text box. So I'm going to do text, user numbers. I'm going to clear that text box because I don't want to keep storing numbers and have more than 5 numbers. Otherwise, I'll never win. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the sub. Now, the reason we're going to exit the sub is later on we're going to try to convert that to an integer. Well, A doesn't convert to an integer. It does convert to an ASCII code value, but that's not what we're looking for. That's not what we need. So if we don't exit the sub, it will continue running the rest of the code in the sub. That's not what we want to do. Now, there's another option, and that is 0 to 9. Now you may be saying, well, we don't need to put that in quotes because those are integers, not when it's inside the text box. If they entered 0 to 9, we need to be able to isolate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do current num. We're going to do plus equals, which means if it's 12, we need to tack on the 2 to the 1. Because the first time it runs, it's going to isolate the 1. The second time it runs, it needs to tack on that 2. And we have it separated by a space, so we'll be able to handle that. And that's going to equal current chars. And then what we're going to do is, once that has happened, we're going to reset current chars because I don't want to keep storing things that I've already done. So that is the other option. Now, there is a third option. And that is when we encounter a space. When we encounter a space, we know we have reached the end of the number, and what we need to do is we need to convert it. So the first thing we're going to do is check that it's in the bounds. We got to pick a number between 1 and 53. So what we're going to do is if 53 is less than, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do convert TOINT 16. We don't need 32. The numbers do not need 32 bits. That's just to save some space. Current num, if it is less than the number that we have converted, then we need to let them know the number is not valid. It is too high. That's one option. Now, another option is if 0 is greater than, meaning they picked a number lower than 0, and all we're going to do is the same thing. INT 16, current num, then we're going to do a message box. The number is not valid. It is too low. And that will tell them, hey, you can't do that. And if it's too high or if it's too low, what we need to do is we need to, in both of these, we need to clear the text box. So user numbers dot text, reset that, and then I want to exit my sub. Oh, I also want to clear the user numbers. So we're going to use user numbers dot clear, and what that will do is it will clear because maybe the third number they enter is too high. Well, if I don't clear my user numbers, it's going to keep those pre-existing numbers. So .clear is a method you can use for your array list that will actually clear it. So then what I'm going to do, this will also need to happen if the number they pick is too high. Put my close parentheses there. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now, We've already checked to see if the numbers are in the bounds. What we need to do next here is we need to take the numbers and we need to convert it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do user numbers dot add. This is when you want to add to the array list, and we're going to run that convert code again. Convert to int 16, and then what are we converting? We're converting current num, and then I need to reset my current characters. Then what I need to do is I need to reset current num, and just like that, we're good to go. We're good to go. So what's going to happen here is we inselect. Now let's go ahead and check this and let's see if it works. This will also teach you how to traverse a array list. So we're going to do for I equals. Now every array or array list starts at index 0. So I'm going to do 0 to 4. That's because I'm storing 5 numbers. And what we're going to do is we're going to say number and I. So we'll say like number 0 is whatever. So we'll do I plus 1. So that way it says number 1 is, and that way it looks better. And then we'll say number 1, let's see here, number 1 is, put a colon, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do user numbers and then I, just like we would with a normal 1D array. So let's go ahead, let's save this program, let's go ahead and let's enter 5 numbers and let's see if it works. Now before we do that, what we need to do is we need to take this for loop right here, we need to move it out of this other for loop because we do not need a nested for loop here. So let's go ahead, let's run this, let's go ahead, let's enter 5 numbers and make sure they are correct. So we're going to do 4, 8, 12, 16, and then 32. So I have single digit numbers and I have double digit numbers. I hit submit. Number 1 is 4, perfect. Number 2 should be 8, it is. Number 3 should be 12, double digit number, and we can see there it has stored the double digit number. We should have 16 and then 32, and our program crashes. All right, let's take a look here. We are outside the range, so for some reason it's not getting to 4. And I see what the problem is. The problem is we're looking for a space. Well, the user is not going to enter a space when they enter their last number, nor should we expect them to. So how in the world can we get a space and tack that on to the text box? Well, all we're going to do right here is we're going to do user characters equal the text box. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tack on that space right there, and that will allow us to go ahead and get the 5th number, because we don't check for the number that it's at the end until we look for a space. By adding this space at the end, we know that we have reached the end. So let's go ahead, let's run it again, and let's enter those 5 numbers and make sure that they come up. 4, 8, 12, 16, and I'm going to do 32. I'm going to submit my numbers. Number 1 is 4. 2 is 8, 3 is 12, 4 is 16, and it should do the last one as well, 32. So it is working now. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to do the play button, because once we get the play button working, we can go back and we can do the quick pick without a problem. So let's go ahead, let's double click on this play button, and let's go ahead and code that. Inside of our button play, what we're going to do is we're going to set match equal to false. That was our global variable, and that checks for a match. Every time we hit play, the computer is going to generate 5 new numbers, so we need to set match equal to false just in case we actually do get numbers that win. We're going to do num as integer. We're going to do R&D num as new random. We'll talk about what all these, the purpose of these in just a minute. We're going to do num set as new array list, and then we're going to have another one, R&D numbers as new array list as well. So we're going to have 2 array lists. We went over earlier how to do create those array lists. Now the first thing we want to do, or let's go over these. So num is going to hold the random number that is generated by this new random. It's going to generate a random number between 0 and the numbers that are left inside of our number set. Now our number set is going to hold all the numbers 1 to 53 because that's what the user can choose, and then the R&D numbers that we're going to have is actually going to be the random numbers that are going to be stored. So numset is not going to store the computer numbers because that is the numbers left in the set. The reason we're using an array list for numset rather than just generating 5 random numbers is to avoid getting a duplicate number. So we don't want to get a duplicate number because that does not happen inside the Fantasy 5 or Lotto in general. This doesn't have to be Fantasy 5. It can be just a 5 number Lotto. This is primarily about how to use array list, not how to generate or build a lottery game, but I mean, we can. So anyway, for I equals 1 to 53, I'm going to do numset.add. That allows me to add to my array list, and I'm going to do I. And then I is going to be 1, then 2, then 3. So let's keep going down. So the next thing I need to do is I need to generate 5 random numbers. So I know this is going to run 5 times. So what I'm going to do is I need to generate a random number. And that's going to be stored in num. I'm going to do rndnum.next. And what I want to do is I want to generate a number between 0 and I want to generate a number between numset.count. Now you may be saying 0 is not a valid number because we check to make sure it's greater than 0. What this is going to do is it's actually going to access not the value itself, but the index of the array list. We're not actually accessing the value. So if it generates the number 35, we're going to be accessing index 35 of the array list, not the value 35. So what we're going to do next is we need to actually add that. So R&D numbers dot add. What we're going to do is we're going to do numset, and then we wanted num. So what that's going to do is we are adding to the R&D number array list. We're taking it from numset. We're taking it from this index that was randomly generated here. And there is an index 0 of my numset, which would be the value 1, because the first number is going to be stored in index 0. The second number is going to be stored in index 1, and so on. The next thing we need to do is we need to remove that number. Now, this can be a little tricky. If I do this, this is wrong. This is not what you want to do. If it generates the number 35 and I put .remove 35, it's actually going to search through the array list and it's going to move the value 35. I don't want to remove the value 35. I want to remove index 35. So what you're going to do is instead of remove, you're going to do .remove at. .remove at removes the index and whatever stored at the index. .remove removes the actual value from the array list, but not the index. So you got to watch out for that. If you do .remove, you're going to run into a set of double numbers, and that's not what we want to do. The next thing we need to do is we need to sort. And we actually need to go back up and do this. We need to sort the random numbers because, for example, let's say we were doing a 3-digit Lotto number, and the numbers that I picked were 1, 2, and 3. The computer spits out 3, then 2, then 1. Well, in every Lotto and Fantasy 5 and Lotto, they sort the numbers from in ascending order from the lowest to the largest. So what we need to do is we need to sort these, otherwise our chances of winning become much, much less. We're going to go back up here and we're going to go ahead and comment this out because we know that works. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take our user numbers and we're just going to sort it. That way they become sorted. And that way it's much easier to check. Now that we have our random numbers, we just need to load them into those labels that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to do label num1.text. And all we're going to do is we're going to say R&D numbers, and then we're going to do index 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste this a few times, 4 and 5. This is going to be 1. This is going to be label 3, which is going to hold the third number, which is in index 2. The fourth number is going to be held in index 3. and the last number is going to be held in index 4. So what we need to do now is make sure that they come out in ascending order, and then what we can do is we will code to see if they have, actually let's code to see if they won first, because if they win, if we get this, we need to be able to show that it actually came up. So what we're going to do is you cannot use this. You cannot do if user numbers dot equals R&D numbers. That will not work. That will not work at all. If you do this, it's going to say that they're always going to be false, and that's because you're generating a new array list. If you've watched any of our object-oriented programming videos, you know when that keyword new is used, it builds a constructor. Because R&D numbers and user numbers, because they are separate arrays, they are not pointing to the same array list. And when you use user number dot equals, it's checking to see what it is pointing to. Because they are not pointing to the same address of where the array list is stored, it's always going to come up as false. So what we need to do is check each individual element of the array list. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do for I equals, we're going to do 0 to 4 because we've got to check index 0, then 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all we're going to do is if user numbers I, if it equals R&D numbers I, meaning is the first number equal to the first one, because we've sorted them. So we can check it out number by number. If it is, then we're going to say match equals true or match equals false. And we're going to let them know you lost. We're going to let them know that you lost. Actually, we can do that with match. What we're going to do here is if it doesn't match, we need to exit the for loop. Because if the first numbers don't match, we don't need to check the rest of them. There's no point in checking the rest of them, because if the first number doesn't match, well, you have lost. Now what we can do is if match equals false, then let's do if it's true. Then we'll let them know they won, which is you have won. And then chances are that's not going to happen. We're going to let them know, hey, you lost. And if they have lost, what we need to do is we need to clear the num set. So if they want to play with the same number again, we can clear that. And then R&D numbers dot clear. And the R&D numbers and num set clearing that, when we click play again, it's going to rebuild the number set, and it's going to rebuild those R&D numbers. So what we need to do here is let's go ahead and run this, and let's see if it works. So we should get a number between 1 and 53. So I'm going to enter my numbers 4, 8, 12, 15, and 32. I'm going to submit my numbers. Now that I have submitted them, I'm going to hit play. So here you can see that we lost. That is expected. We're going to play again, and we have lost. We're going to play again, and we have lost. And it looks like it's working. We're not getting duplicate numbers here. And because it's random, you're going to get different numbers every time. So it is working. What we need to do now is we need to do the quick pick. So the most of the time when people win the lottery, most of the time it's because they chose the quick pick option. So we're going to do quick pick. That way the computer will actually generate the numbers. So let's go ahead and let's code for this. Inside of our button quick pick, we have 3 local variables: num set as new array list, num as integer, R&D num as new random. And you may be saying, well, didn't we already declare those in the play button? We did, but those are local variables. When we exit that sub and go to a new sub, all those local variables are removed. You may be saying, well, why didn't we just make them global to begin with? Because local variables are more efficient in your speed of your program. All right, so what we need to do is we need to do user numbers.clear, because if I pick numbers and they're not winning and I go to click on quick pick, I need to get rid of the numbers that I have generated and put in the numbers that the computer has generated. I don't want to tack on to my list of numbers. Then what I want to do is I want to clear that text box. That way it shows I don't have any numbers to the user. I need to build the set of the numbers. So I'm going to do numset.add. And I'm simply going to add the value I. So I'm going to add numbers 1 to 53. Then what I need to do is I need to generate those 5 random numbers. So this is going to look very similar to what we did inside the play button. I need to generate a number between 0 and numset.count. Now you may be saying, well, there's 53 numbers inside numset.count, and you are correct. But remember, it's going to pick the index between 0 and 52. I'm not actually accessing the value, I'm accessing the index, and the lowest index is 0, the highest index is 52 when I run this 53 times, because the index always starts at 0. The next thing I want to do is, I want to add that to my user number array list. I'm adding numset, what index? Num, which was randomly generated, and then of course I need to remove it. And we're going to use remove at because I'm removing the index. If I use remove, it's going to remove the actual value. And the number 1 is stored inside index 0. So if I don't remove index 0 in the element there, it's still, the 1 is still going to show up. All right, the next thing we need to do is user numbers. We need to sort it. Then what we need to do is we need to build the string and put it inside the text box. Now, the reason we're not just going to put in the user numbers I is because remember, there's a space between each number. So we're going to do user numbers I, and then we're going to tack on that space. We're going to save our program, and you want to spell text correctly. There we go. We're going to run this, and we're going to see if we win. We're probably not going to win, but that'll be okay. So here we go. I'm going to choose quick pick. And what is going on here? What did I not do? Plus equals. Plus equals. We want to build on. If I use equals, it's only going to put the last value in. It's going to run, but plus equals will allow me to put all the values in. Minor oversight there. That has a major impact though. So quick pick. There are my numbers. I'm going to click play, and we lost. Play again, we lost. Play again, we lost. And we keep losing. But you can play this as many times as you want now that you have built your lottery simulator. If you found this video helpful on how to use ArrayList, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to help the channel grow. And we'll see you guys in the next video.